To former U.S. diplomat Bet Bruin. He's president of the Global Situation Room Consultancy. Many thanks for joining us from Virginia's capital, Richmond.
Good to be back with you.
First of all, your reaction to what our correspondent in Washington, Philip Crowther, just told us, that there's no briefing from the White House to the Senate, the chair of the Foreign Relations Committee wondering if there's stalling going on. Your thoughts on that?
So we're hearing suggestions from Secretary Pompeo and President Trump that this is going to be a transparent process, but all of the evidence suggests that they are trying to sweep this under the rug as fast as possible. They're not willing to answer many questions. They're not providing much in the way of evidence. I think at this point, there's a lot of concern on Capitol Hill and elsewhere in the United States.
In defense of U.S. authorities, we have the Turks, it seems, putting out this steady stream of leaks regarding the investigation. How much in a situation like this should U.S. authorities be going public with regarding what they know?
Well, I think what you see from Istanbul and Ankara are efforts to keep the pressure up on the Americans to not let this go. And we are going to continue to see this pattern because, unfortunately, the statements in the last few days have been rather dismissive. When Secretary Pompeo was in the region, he even mentioned the Khashoggi affair as the third issue that he was addressing with leaders in Riyadh and in Istanbul and Ankara. I think this is a problematic pattern. The Turks are trying to
We seem to be having sound problems there. The end of your answer there, Brett Bruin, cutting off. So from the evidence we have, what are the links between Donald Trump and Saudi Arabia?
Clearly, there are business ties that go back several decades. I think, unfortunately, as your report suggested, we simply don't have all the evidence. At this point, we only have his public statements, this sort of braggadocious approach, which may, in some respects, be overstated, but in others is perhaps only part of the story.
Is there a precedent when it comes to a U.S. president who comes from the private sector into politics like this?
Perhaps the closest case would be that of Ronald Reagan. Though he was a governor before coming into the presidency, he came out of Hollywood, he was an actor, but he respected a lot of the traditions that politicians throughout our history have abided by. What we're seeing in the case of Donald Trump is someone who is brazenly breaking with tradition, and I think, unfortunately, he will leave a presidency that is weaker and that unfortunately does not have some of those same rules in place.
There were several visits by Donald Trump's son-in-law, who's also his Middle East advisor, to Saudi Arabia. What are your thoughts on those? On Jared Kushner's role in all of this?
Jared Kushner has little experience in diplomacy, and I think we've seen repeated examples, whether it's with Russia, with Mexico, and most recently now with Saudi Arabia, of missteps and efforts to manipulate him. So unfortunately, this back channel that he's created with MBS and with other leaders is not serving the interest of the United States. It's serving foreign leaders who are trying to do a runaround our normal national security process.
Would you go so far as to accuse Kushner and Trump of enabling MBS, of giving him sort of a tacit green light to throw his weight around?
Look, in diplomacy, you have two levels of communication. The things that you say publicly and through official channels, and then you have this more informal dialogue. The problem is that when that informal dialogue is not informed by the expertise of our State Department, our intelligence service, the security services, we end up in a very dangerous place. That's where we are right now. Jared Kushner is back channeling with the Crown Prince in Riyadh, giving him perhaps comfort, giving him perhaps advice that is not well considered and could get us even further down a path where the Crown Prince feels that he's on safe ground.
You say dangerous. How dangerous?
Because the Crown Prince is listening to the messages that he is hearing from Jared, from perhaps other leaders in the Trump administration that are perhaps reassuring. They are trying to smooth over some of the outrage right now from leaders in Washington. I mean, you saw yesterday Senator Lindsey Graham come out in a very direct way and suggest that the Crown Prince needs to step aside. This back channel is likely then going to be activated, and efforts will be made by the Trump administration to suggest those aren't serious concerns that the Crown Prince has to worry about.
Brett Bruin, the president of Global Situations Room, the consultancy, many thanks for joining us from Richmond, Virginia.